Bulavinaka, and welcome to Fiji BC, a 4-part video podcast series that goes deep into what Fiji was like before this technology back in the day. This is the last time I'm using it, I promise. The reason why this show was put together was because I was curious. I wanted to learn more about how Fiji was like pre-contact, and instead of going to the libraries as any other normal person should, I can't read textbooks that don't have pictures in it. So I went to the next best thing, and that is Mr. Sevudredre, who is our special guest and our only guest for this show. And he is the fountain of knowledge.
So, fountain of youth.
Fountain of knowledge when it comes to anything and everything that we today collectively know about what Fiji was like. And for this episode, our last episode, we will be going into the what I like to say, our backyard, the ocean and our connection to it. So we were just before we actually press record on this, we're actually discussing about Fiji and our links to the ocean. But before that, I wanted to say, Mr. Sevudredre, about how I read somewhere about how one person was saying, the Pacific Ocean is so vast and wide, and the islands are so small. And how do you people cope with all that distance, with all that ocean in between the islands? And the reply was that where you see oceans, we see highways. Where you see distance, for us is just our backyard / the resources, where we get our resources from. It's like basically our land, just in a different form. And so I wanted to discuss more about the aspects of Fijian culture in the old days, both with how we saw it as a natural resource, as well as how we used it to traverse. And, speaking of traversing, like we were just talking about now, was the timelines. I should start off with one question at a time. The first one being, I wanted to ask about the timelines of how when Fijians settled upon this hallowed land that we call Fiji. How long ago was that, and how has it affected our connection with the ocean?
There were different levels of migration, different migrations into Fiji.
So there wasn't just one bunch of
migration.
What's the story of the first Fijian who came to?
Oh, that. Are you referring to?
I forgot.
There was this migration. That's the latest migration. That's why it's still fresh in the memory, so to speak.
I forgot.
The memory about coming in a canoe called Kaunitoni.
Kaunitoni, that's the one.
That's the latest one.
Okay.
When I say latest, that's the one in the memory of memories. That's the one that can be retained. The earliest migrations in would have been around 1500 BC to 500 BC.
So we're speaking of several.
Yes, we're speaking of several.
Like waves of migrations into Fiji. So that means there were people that were settled here way before our sort of memory of how old Fiji was, that kind of thing. It goes way, way back.
Put it this way, the earliest arrivals, they set up shop, they established, and they eventually grew to like the land, and then they traveled inland. These are the first interior tribes. The late arrivals came and started settling on the coast.
Oh, so it's like, okay, so...
It's already taken. Oh, the real estate, this already been taken. You have only that. So the first arrivals are the ones who are now
inland. And
but
the coastal guys...
The late arrivals.
Okay, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. I thought, in terms of like migration, they just sort of all came together and then they all together moved.
In terms of when they arrived, they would first of all scout, and there would be evidence of human habitation. The scouts would look out for them. coconuts lying in husks around. Some people. So let's remain at the sea. The ones who came first, they didn't see any habitation, humans. These are the ones who then explore, living on land, inland in the mountains.
So it's almost like if you were to do a DNA sort of test, you could see that, the ones with the, I don't know, is that a thing? The ones with the older genes?
Yes, there is a DNA test. Whether it says how old, I don't know, but it just gives the links you back to where you are related, where you came from.
And so with these different waves of migration, what is the last wave?
Last one would have been AD.
Okay.
The ones who would have come in 800 AD to 1000 AD.
And that's probably the ones that are the coastal developers now. And of course they came in their own like big seafaring canoes. Or did they have were Druas the double hull canoes, were they a thing back then?
The word Drua was brought to our attention through observations by Captain Cook, who made references, not to Captain Cook, other Europeans who sailed and observed Fiji, de Mondeville, Abel Tasman. They noticed this double-hulled canoe.
They were everywhere.
Yeah. So double hull, when something is double, is called Nrua, twins. But they never saw it as Nrua. The word Nrua initially literally means twins. But when they're twin hulls, okay, then the observations from outside noticed these wonderful masterpieces, architecture, constructions, yes. Contraptions.
Contraptions. Right.
So the Nrua, because the ones who created them, let me rephrase, the ones who created the Nrua, there is a legend of a god, a deity, who is the deity of craftsfolk, of the canoe constructors. His name is Rokola. So, according to legend, Rokola was the one who created and put together these masterpiece canoes for the ocean travel. And it was until recently, as in 200 or 300 years ago, when the analysis of these canoes revealed that inbuilt into the canoes was knowledge of the physics of the ocean and the elements and the wind.
Physics like?
The physics, how each part was designed to withstand the forces of the ocean.
Right.
Was also designed to withstand the force of the wind. Was also designed to mitigate the changing sudden conditions at sea. To the point where cooking places were also part of the canoe.
Yeah, I went to the museum and the Nrua there.
Ratufina.
That one, is that like
the last Nrua?
The last Nrua.
The last Nrua from those times, still intact.
Still intact.
Yeah. Not the biggest, the last.
I was just gonna ask because the size, to me, it's pretty big. But there were.
So if you still with that illustration of the Fiji Museum, you stand from one side of the museum and see that Nrua, Ratfinau, right to the other side of the museum.
That room that the canoe sits in.
Until that would have been the largest.
Wow.
It was called Rusa Ivanua.
So in the museum, I mean, folks, if you've ever been to the Fiji Museum, where the current Nrua,
the maritime section of the Nrua,
right?
The Nrua of the museum.
Don't worry, we're on the last episode now. So the room where the Nrua sits now on display, actually they're fixing the place up, yeah. So they might shift it somewhere. Anyway, where it was sort of at the left end of the room, and then the size that you're describing was pretty long. I mean, I don't know. It's how long?
Capable of transporting 500
500 people on a canoe.
on a canoe. I don't like the word canoe. I like what Captain Cook said, ships.
Ships. It's definitely a ship that
It
size.
demeans the grace and the splendor in this artwork.
In this house, we shall say ships now.
Ships.
We shall
ship
say
it.
ship. Yeah, we'll use the word ship, definitely. It is more befitting of its size and grandeur. And one of the things that I noticed about the description was, they had sections where you could cook, which is in the front part.
Yeah.
And it's like a panel, and the hull of the canoe, you could it was tall enough that you could stand in it. That was how large and how deep the hull, and two of them. So the fact that there was two of them just boggles the mind.
Mind-boggling, yeah.
Right. So you mentioned previously, the boat builders,
Yeah.
the original boat builders, they weren't from Lao, the elders.
Elder clan of boat builders of canoe shipmaking are the people from the land called Narauyamba. Narauyamba is an ancestral land. It's nestled in Nakawandra, the Olympus of the indigenous community in Fiji, the Nakawandra. There are plots of acres of land that's called the land of Bonua Nikai Narauyamba. And the Narauyamba people were master craftsmen. They're back there now, they moved back. But most of them live in Nukutumbo village in Rewa and other parts of around Benga, around Rewa. These are the elder.
The original boat builders.
Yeah, the elder original. The new kid on the block was the Chafau and the Lemaki who came in from Manon, from Samoa, through King of Tonga. And whatever is with King of Tonga goes to the Tuinea and Lakemba. So that's how it passed. The craftsmen from Samoa, the Lemaki and the Leha, that's their name, or they were known as those names. The Lemaki and the Leha, how they managed to come and live in Fiji at Lakemba. And they made a shop in Fulanga and Kambara. But the headquarters is in Lakemba.
And so that's how they became known.
They are new kid, the new craftsmen, the master craftsmen.
So that's how today they sort of...
They still regard themselves as the junior, the younger, because they know the elder. By the time the young master craftsmen came, the craft art of canoe ship construction had already been on the wane, had already died out. Yes. Because there was no more travel.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So that's a interesting, there was a point that you brought up about how when we traveled in the old days out from, and then we came to Fiji in the waves of migration, back then we were pretty sure of ourselves when it came to knowing the ocean. But that seems to have sort of died out because we became a land-faring we sort of settled down.
Yes.
And could you go into more detail on that?
I think that's where the English proverb, we literally burned our boats.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to navigate then, because this, when you're talking about this tradition, ocean and navigation,
the
Moana, the old traditions have been forgotten into oblivion.
That's sad.
It is sad, which is why the recent tradition from the Samoa, Tongan and Lao connection are the ones still fresh in memory. The ones who came in the 1800s. The canoe craftsmen from Samoa who were asked by the King of Tonga, and they were given as a gift to Tuinea of Lakemba. That's the recent one. The ones who traveled in from about 500, 1000 BC, these are the ones
who are now inland.
Yeah, who are now inland. See, when I mentioned the land of the elder craftspeople,
Yeah.
the Kainarawiamba, that's up in the mountains. So these were the first arrivals. They arrived, they settled, they loved the land, and they moved there now in the interior. It's the late arrivals who are, the memory is fresh.
Right.
Which is why the only working memory we have of our navigation, we are looking at the new kids, the later arrivals.
Right.
Which is why it explains the ocean memory or navigation memory is stronger in our kin from Aotearoa, Cook Island, and Tahiti Nui, because they were the ones who arrived after most of these places were settled.
Okay, that explains the sort of Polynesian
Yes.
connections, Polynesian influence. Did that also carry over to our boat designs?
Oh, the boat designs had time to evolve
Okay.
through certain traditions, sharing knowledge from what's known as Micronesia, taking parts from Micronesia, parts from the Polynesia, and creating what became the Vamakau. The original was the Nrua, the Nrua that was fashioned by this deity, Rokola. There's no recollection, there's no tangible memory. It's all in the legend, in the stories. This is the original creator of the Nrua. But the recent one is the ones who came up with the Vamakau and also the Nrua from the Lauan tradition. Lau/Tonga/Samoa/.
Which explains why I guess the boat designs are...
That's why the tradition is still strong, the memory is still fresh.
And the design is sort of similar.
Similar. Because it's still the same people, come to think. Like you said, yes, you correctly said, where they saw boundaries, our ancestors saw, it's another path to connect. Did you know that the old kings of Tonga, they came from this place called Burotu, which is known today as modern day Matuku Island in Laos? Before it became Burotu, there was an early clan living there, the Kaimburotu. And they waged war with the Kai Kandaru still remains, and they were banished. This warring clan then left Burotu, and they waged war, and they became the first king of Tonga, and they went to wage war and became the first, not Malietoa, before the Malietoa and Samoa. Which is why the tradition, when the kings of Tonga are buried, they are made to face
the island.
They say their soul travels back in Halaki Pulotu. Their soul goes back to Pulotu, where they came from. So, for in Fiji, most of the traditional navigation memory has fallen into myth and legend, because that's how old we have been in Fiji. Like I mentioned, by the time in 1000 AD, when the migrations from Cook Island migrated into New Zealand, we already had our trade. By the time Aotearoa was inhabited, when the Cook Islands came to the Maori people came to inhabit Aotearoa, by 1000 AD, there was already a flourishing trade between Viti, Samoa, and Tonga. The ocean tradition,
Ocean sailing.
Yes. So the memory of that Nrua, I don't know. By 1000 AD, the ancient, the elder clan, they were still, remember the clan from Laos came in the 1800s, 17 to 1800s, the Machafau and the Lemaki. So it was this trade. Actually, it was more the Tongans who were the middlemen. The Fijians did not sail, the Samoans, it was the Tongans who were doing the middlemen. Taking from here, boom, tweaking it, offering it there. So it was more the Tongan tradition of sailing.
Okay, well, speaking of like the ships in general, let's run a scenario. Say, for example, I was a chief in a part of Fiji, and I wanted one canoe. I wanted one big drua, one big ship for myself. Can you like walk me through how a chief would go about commissioning the
Right.
ship?
Firstly, you look
And this is back in the day.
You look around yourself. You look amongst your craftsmen. If there isn't any traditional ship builder, you use them, and they go. Because all craftsmen are connected. You know, there's this word is used in English, guilds.
Right.
So
Craftsmen
they
guilds.
belong to the same guild. There was this affinity, this brotherhood with people of the same guilds. So the guild who constructed something but not canoe or ship, they would use their connection to approach the ones who specialize in the ship. So they would approach I mentioned in one of the trade, the reciprocity
Right.
would come into play.
What you don't have.
Yes.
Okay.
So the one who commissioned, the chief, would amass the wealth that is abundant around in his clan, in his tribe, as tokens of appreciation to whoever the master craftsman to come and construct the ship. Just like in European and Asian cultures, the artists were highly sought after. But in this context, they were not sought after as artists. They were sought after because their expertise enabled them to move from point A to point B. There were no roads then, there were no highways. The sea was
The highway.
the highway. So in order for them to move around, they needed someone to ensure they built the right vessel. So if a chief had it, well and good. If a chief didn't have it, you have to garner up lots of tributes and offerings. And that's where the trade comes in, the goodwill trade.
Right.
So rest assured, if you had a master craftsman or not, you can still get your ship.
So after they got the master, let's just say they didn't have it, and so they gathered tribute and they hired him. What's next? Is he like sort of like the main guy who then gathers all the relevant people to start building? He's sort of like the main.
Yes. He becomes the foreman, so to speak.
The foreman, right?
And then he directs the home boys, the home people who are the craftspeople in the clan. He directs them. Foreman.
Yeah, and he handles the construction.
Yeah.
How long does a canoe drawer like that take? So, say for example, what's an average size? The one in the museum, is that considered small?
Ratufina, yeah, that's small by Andrew standards. Ratufina, the one in the Fiji Museum.
So then an average size would be like 3 times the size of that? Like hey, I just want a boat. Okay, it's this size. You want the medium size, you want the small size, or you want large? And you want fries with that, that kind of thing. This is just for the purpose of just figuring out how this works.
The notable Nrua of humongous sizes in the recent history is Ramarama and Rusai Banua. Ramarama was said to be able to carry 500 adults. Rusai Banua is larger. Ramarama was gifted from the Tidakau to Tineau in Lao. Rusai Banua was the largest so far in, I've forgotten the measure. They give measurements in the imperial system and it doesn't stick with me.
Right. No, that's
But
fine.
going by the Fiji Museum inside, it's the one you walk from one side of where the Nrua is to the other side where the Mbilimbili is.
Okay, that's very huge.
Yeah,
that's probably like 7-8 times larger.
Yes, the one that can take about 1,000 adults.
Wow, yeah.
So the word Rusa means destroy. So it was jokingly called Rusai Banua. It was so easy it will perish on land without going into the sea.
Oh my goodness.
So it took almost, if I remember correctly, almost half a year to construct because weather / peace and security, the continuity was not always through and through. But they managed to complete the Rusai Banua, And when they launched it, it was said to have been launched at the peak of the cyclone season, when a cyclone was hitting Fiji.
Why?
In the late 1700s.
What is the reason for that?
They just wanted to show off, to show that cyclone won't have anything,
look at that, man! Look at
won't have any impact on this Rusavanua.
Right.
And they launched it.
In the middle of a cyclone.
And the tradition says that when it was launched, in the middle of the cyclone, when the sea was at its furious, it was just like dancing on top of the ocean. And that's what yes, we told you, we are the craftsmen, this will dance. That cyclone won't have any impact.
That is amazing. So with regards to like the launching of Andrua, I actually asked around how that works. They sort of launch them. They face them towards they face the hull towards the ocean, and they sort of go on the.
The canoe is first of all is constructed inland. From inland to the ocean is quite a distance.
Of the original construction site.
Yes.
They don't construct it like right neck, like how we build our boats.
They can. They actually, because the constructors are, I have to rephrase. The constructors are on the island, so it's the horizon is not far off.
Right. Okay.
Their ruler is the horizon.
Ah, so they measure everything.
Yes, that's the ruler. The measure, and then it is rolled out onto the ocean.
When you say rolled out, you mean like they had the timber, and they sort of rolled, like put the timber on like that, and it was rolled out. No, how was it launched into?
There are traditions that speak of human timbers.
Human
rollers rather. Human rollers. Human rollers. These human rollers were arranged. The function was just one. There, as the canoes, the ship was launched, or they were the rollers, they die. Of course they'll die. They'll be.
I don't think anyone does it for a job.
Yeah. But that was the
tribute?
The tribute, the offering to the god of whoever they're offering.
Like a bloody sacrifice. So basically the commission of a nice, big, pretty thing.
A bloody commissioning.
Okay.
Yeah. So the human rollers would most likely be those who were captured from war. Or those who, if there was no war, those who were just captured.
Okay.
Just go around, it's like saying, just go around and collect some coconuts and then bring them here. So the traditions that speak of the latest Fijian history of Vakombau, he would dispatch his people to go gather. Just go look for some rollers from those islands, just get them. And then they'll unwillingly become rollers, but then.
And so that was all to sort of like the tribute towards the god, to ask for blessing for the boat launch?
Yes, what they refer to as christening of when they smashed.
How we smashed the bottle. So
that was our version of not christening, but yes, to launch. Yeah.
Well, good to know that some sort of tradition still happens.
yes, the different versions, different parallels.
Yeah. So those were So after the launch, then that would enter. So now,
particularly the ones that were commissioned, not the everyday one that was just done.
Oh, okay, because that would be
okay. Take it, go.
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
It's
pretty
the one
tiring to keep.
Yes.
So these were special occasion.
The ones
boats.
that were commissioned.
Right.
It had to have its blessing. It had to fit this sort of high sort of protocols,
Right.
Spirituality.
Super important. And so
to set it aside, to set it distinct.
And so now, like I'm that chief that we're talking about. So now I've christened the boat, had it human rollers. So now it's all in the ocean, and so now it belongs to me. And did they use it? Did they have like naval warfare? You know, when I speak of naval warfare, in my head I think of pirate ships and how they shoot cannons at each other.
The only naval warfare in Fiji was during the Mbau warlords' time, Vakombau.
Did we prefer to fight on land?
We fought mostly on land. But it was Vakombau who created the navy. He actually borrowed people from both Mbenga and Kandabu, and they formed this clan of seafarers. They still live today in Bow Island. They're known as the Kai Lasakau. They're known as Kaiwai, but they're not Kaiwai as the ordinary fisher folk. They're the Kaiwai, they are the navies. Just what you see in the Roman movies, they actually ram the canoes. So the Kambao created that to ram against the canoes of his enemies, the Rewa chief.
Wow. So he was a pioneer when it came to naval
warfare.
Huh. So they'd ram the boats and then just jump
and storm on when they were...
That's cool.
And they were also fisher folk, the Kailasakau, ram the boats, man the boats. They also were the fisher folk. They would fish, not for fish, but for these sacrifices. So that the Kamba would meet his quota, his bloodthirsty war god.
Man. Oh, so Ratu Lakambao, he's the gods that he brought in was bloodthirsty gods. What were they?
The generic name was Rokotabo. The overall was called Rokomoko.
Rokomoko.
But the version that was in Mbao was more identified with the size of his forehead. This is called, in Fijian language, this measurement is called vanga. In a different part of Fiji, it's a swear word, but in eastern part of Fiji, it's a vanga. So the god of war in Mbao was Vangawalu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Vangawalu, right?
Yes, he was a giant with a big head and a big appetite for blood.
That is quite a fearsome appearance.
Yep.
I like how the physical description is actually his name.
We wouldn't go there because many of these gods, actually, their name is actually their physical description.
It goes back to episode 1, how we talked about how parts of the history stay alive because of the names. Then the history is kept alive in the name. It's like how us Fijians, we love the surnames. Instead of just like just a surname, it has to be a surname of like something that happened or some family member that went to Lebanon, Lebanon. That's right. Sinai, or there was a cyclone, you were born during a cyclone. You know those news articles about those babies, the men with the longest name?
Yes. So those are oral ways of keeping events and of history remembered. So when you utter the name, because okay.
And that's probably how they can draw, I guess, relations or...
Yeah. Take, for example, the name Vakombao. It's now known. Vakombao is from 3 words. Va, as in bad, ko, mbao. Mbao is bad. Because he before he became Vakombao, he is known as Seru. Because of his plan, his coup, he reinstated his father back to become warlord. He actually burnt and sacked Mbao Island.
Wow.
He burnt the island. Everybody had to flee for their lives and they had to jump into the ocean. And Mbao was damaged and spoiled. And that event became his name, Vakombao.
So after he trashed the island, he named himself Destroyer.
The people,
they gave him that
they
name.
named him after that and it stuck.
And it's done.
But his official name is Seru Tambakaudoro.
Okay. So that's interesting. So I guess legends and history gave him the name Vakombao.
Hey, like you would have in the English tradition, Mr. Crookshank.
Right.
Crooked legs. Mr. Longshanks, long legs.
That is a well-known tradition. I guess it carries over everywhere else.
And you thought we were here, we were not as superior. Well, no.
We got our way.
Because we did not ask and we didn't bother to find out, which is why we think so low of ourselves. We have this inferiority complex, which is why I'm thankful again in you enabling these discussions, because I hope they would then create this awareness in the children listening. Well, oh, wow. It's the wow that begins to light up all these bulbs, etc.
You hear that, guys? We're amazing. And with that, I guess we'll bring to an end this only 4-part series, because it's only what I can sort of handle in terms of production. I'm kind of new at this. So first of all, I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Sevudredre, for graciously accepting as a guest so that you can come on this show. Without you, we wouldn't have this show. We need someone who actually, can articulate and explain in depth and in detail our past, which is very, very interesting. I hope there could be some more opportunities of us getting together and having a good yarn about Fiji's past. But with this, I shall bring this episode to a close. And with this web series, if you're watching it in order, if you're watching part 4 first, what are you doing, man? Go back to part 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, let's sort of build on each other.
Tolfa.
Yeah, what he said.
Tahawa Tolfa.
Thank you very much for watching these episodes of Fiji BC, a 4-part webcast. A 4-part video podcast. A 4-part video podcast series. I hope that this show was of some importance to you, and I hope you learned something new from it, because I learned a lot. I learned a total lot. I can't wait to revisit this someday in the future. We will see how things go. But if you guys liked it, feel free to. It's funny. I've always wanted to do this. Like and subscribe and hit that subscribe channel button and the bell notification button. But I don't have.
Like they say in the AGT, BGT, click the button.
Click that button. But I don't have a YouTube channel. Sorry, this video is going up on YouTube and Facebook. So if you'd like, subscribe to the channel or subscribe to the socials that I have put on the link below. And otherwise, we may see you in the next one. More manta. All right. Woo!
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Lele